How's it going, everybody? Great to see ya. Thanks for stopping by again. Ray says Don Cherry sucks, man. I don't disagree. And Kieran says, who won the debate? Man, you know who didn't win the debate? The people who watched it, because that was awful. That was really, really bad. We're going to talk a bit about why I think that debate was bad. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. But at the end of the day, the big flaw was that the question seemed geared towards, attacking people like Bernie Sanders by trying to make him look bad, by trying to give him impossible to answer questions, and yet ignoring the weak spots of other candidates, and then also giving far, far too much time to people like Amy Klobuchar, who's got no chance of winning this contest. She's got no chance at all, and she seemed to get treated like a frontrunner, which to me is unacceptable. So, there's a whole bunch of factors here that really limited the debate and its quality. But on the whole, I still think Bernie Sanders had a great night. He was clear about his points. He hit his targets really well. I don't think he got enough time to speak. I don't think questions were asked to him that allowed him to really explore where his policies are strong and where they differentiate themselves from the rest of the party. But at the end of the day, I thought he had a decent night on the whole, right? I don't know what you guys think. Let me know. In terms of Joe Biden continues to show that he just does not have it. His discussions are rambly at best. He's just saying things like President China. He's saying things like he's like, I have support of the only black woman ever elected to Senate, forgetting, I guess, that there is literally a black woman currently in the Senate and a couple people down from him on stage. Again, not a great look. Just on issue after issue after issue, Biden really doesn't seem like he's up for the task. I have no understanding about why he's still, getting such high levels of support. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But I feel like Pete Buttigieg is probably going to end up taking a lot of support from him, and that you're going to see more neoliberals move towards Pete. Somebody says my timer was misleading. Well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure that I got on in and around 11. So it's good to see you. Sorry I was a tad bit early or late or what have you. But in any case, I think it's really important to talk about how Tulsi Gabbard sort of at the end there hit Pete pretty hard. But again, it's like, why are we spending so much time having these mini debates between candidates that don't really have a shot at winning? And it's like, there's a lot of time we need to have spent between the 4, maybe 5 people that are actually in this race. And I don't know how productive it is, given that we're just a few weeks away from voting. And, Christmas time is going to be a dead space to actually have campaigning. And then we're right into Iowa. We're right into New Hampshire. It's like we got to start actually having discussions between Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders, Warren. I don't know who else you'd add to really get down to this. Yeah, President Saudi Arabia too. My God. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Biden was a real mess tonight, guys. He was a real mess. He's trying to say that decriminalization, he's trying to imply that it's the same as legalization. I get it. It's an improvement over existing policy. I understand, but it's still not going to address fundamental inequities with how the policies are applied to drug use. It's still a major issue. And I think that Cory Booker, while he sort of embarrassed himself by trying to defend the wealthy tonight, made a fantastic point in tying, the marijuana legalization as an act of racial justice, and Joe Biden being extremely weak there, 100%. Other factors tonight, again, just the quality of debate was really poor. The way the questions were framed, the amount of time given to candidates to speak, the fact that certain questions which clearly needed to be either given to everybody given their importance, or at least to candidates who have something substantive to say on the issue, was not happening. And they had questions that just, I don't think, merit inclusion. Why does a question about compulsory or increased military service matter? Who is that for? Who is that for? Why is that? That's not a debate anyone is realistically having. That's not a question on the forefront of American society. Like, that's not Medicare for all. That's not, marijuana legalization. That's not, taxing the rich. That's not free university. And it's like we spend far too many times on these random, like, flavor questions that are utterly meaningless at this stage, right? Like, I can't express how bad this debate was. I really feel, without sounding conspiratorial, that this was an attempt to rig a debate against Bernie. Now, it's hard to rig a debate, right? Because, like, it's not like you can win or lose a debate in black and white terms. There's no points to be scored. There's no ranking at the end of it. But the way the questions were asked, how little time Bernie got, Bernie's given questions, it's like, hey, you can end the war in Afghanistan, but the Taliban wins. What do you choose? Whereas other candidates are getting questions about how, like, do you oppose Donald Trump on this issue? So on the one hand, Bernie Sanders is given a question that no matter how he answers, he's going to anger somebody, versus a question where you can clearly lean into an anti-Donald Trump position, which is going to make 95% of the people watching and basically 99% of the people voting in the Democratic primary happy. And so in that way, it's fundamentally a process of distortion against Bernie Sanders in this contest. And I think it's very clear that the process was trying to give a bump to Klobuchar, which I don't understand why, because I feel she's a lost cause, at least in this race, and Pete Buttigieg, who I think they want to kind of confirm his momentum by trying to give him a rise there. But I have to say, at the very end, when Tulsi Gabbard went at him, and I've been critical of Tulsi, but when she went at him there, he was shook. That whole cool, Boy Scout, very, very, like, prim and proper image sort of fell off, and he sounded very vindictive. He sounded very mean in his responses. And when Tulsi responded back, you could see the fear in his eyes. Let me know in the chat, guys. Let me know in the chat. At that last moment there, could you not see the fear in Buttigieg's eyes when Tulsi went at him? Like, I saw that. It was a different look than you normally see from Pete Buttigieg, who to his credit, as a politician, one of his greatest strengths is he's always so composed. But he lost it in that moment. He was broken. He was broken. What do you guys think in the chat? I'd love to know what you guys think about this debate. Who did you think won? Who did you think lost? I think, for instance, there were certain things that needed to be made more of. I mean, I think it was good that they had some foreign policy discussion. Excuse me. But I think it's really sad that there was no discussion about Bolivia. And I think that's a real sign that they want to try to hide away any controversial issues that, can't be, used as a political talking point very easily. And Bolivia, of course, is a coup that most mainstream American politicians, Republican and Democrat, are supporting. Most politicians in Canada are supporting. And so besides Bernie Sanders, no one's really said anything about it, at least anything critical about it. And so they didn't want to bring that up and actually remind people that the United States is backing a brutal coup in Latin America right now. Mayo Pete is the worst. I mean, Pete's awful. His positions are awful. I mean, there were some really bad positions tonight. I think one of the worst positions. Beastie, thanks for the peace sign. Great to have you. Good watch tonight. How did Bernie do overall? Bernie did really well, I think. It was hard, though, tonight because the questions aimed at him didn't give him a lot of room, and I don't feel he was given enough time to speak, given how much Bernie has to say and how much of what Bernie has to say is substantive and on point and valid and distinct from the rest of the field. But I thought he did okay. But maybe the worst thing of the night, and let me know if you guys think there was something worse, was Klobuchar just trying to suggest that, like, Bernie Sanders and I guess Elizabeth Warren to some degree are, like, all running bumper sticker policies, and that, it's unrealistic to talk about, things like Medicare for all and free tuition, when she damn well knows that, like, if you raise taxes on the rich even a little bit, you could get billions and billions and billions of dollars to easily pay for those programs. And Klobuchar dismissing it as saying, oh, I'd love to just staple a diploma under every desk, implying that free tuition, that free universal education from pre-K to PhD is like giving everybody a free degree, which is absolute BS, right? Like this total dismissal, not only of bold policy, Klobuchar very much running on the good things aren't possible platform, but then going into this idea that, free tuition is basically everybody gets a participation diploma is just a sign that she's not meaningfully engaging in the actual debates at hand. She's not offering a substantive critique of those policies. She's just saying they're unrealistic, and therefore I don't have to engage with them because they're unrealistic, which is this sort of tautology that it's like, I don't have to actually reckon with the fact that Bernie Sanders and to a lesser degree Elizabeth Warren are offering real good policies on important issues, and I and the other neoliberals on this stage have nothing in response. Yeah, Mayo Pete is phenomenal, guys. I love it. And tonight, even like Pete was able to dodge his question about support among African Americans, but I think that like it's a major issue. It's an absolutely phenomenally important issue that Pete Buttigieg just does not have support among African Americans. And it's like, if he's going to win, he's going to need to at least get some. He doesn't need to win African Americans necessarily, but he needs to get some support, and he currently doesn't have it. And I don't know if he's done anything tonight to earn it. I think that, he's going to continue to struggle with that demographic. Other things to talk about, Andrew Yang, I'm not a huge fan. I don't like his type of philosophy on universal basic income. I think that if you implement the use of universal basic income, you have to do it through a much more ambitious manner, and you have to combine it with socialist forms of ownership of the means of production. A basic income on its own isn't enough. But Andrew Yang, again, he doesn't get a lot of time. It's more understandable because he's near the bottom of the polling. But still, Andrew Yang doesn't get a lot of time, but he does make good use of his time. He had some good zingers. He got a lot of applause. And when I think of somebody who, like, I only get a couple minutes per debate, but I'm going to use them, Andrew Yang did come off reasonably well. I don't think he's in this to win the presidency, but I think that guy has probably built himself a political career. I don't know what his goal is, if he's hoping to be someone's VP or if he's hoping for a cabinet position. Maybe he's hoping to make a Senate run or a Congress run at some point and maybe make a presidential run 8 years from now. He's still pretty young. Yeah, like, see, Yang and Tulsi, they both have some good positions, but then they also have some really weird positions, right? They're very eclectic candidates. Like Tulsi destroyed Mayo Pete, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. But then, and she's really good at speaking out against war generally, but then she's got the whole supporting Modi thing, and then she's got the whole we need to be more multi-partisan, when it's like, no, you don't need to work with Donald Trump Republicans. You need to defeat them at the polls and institute bold left policy. And it's like Andrew Yang, the same thing. The guy comes off really well on some issues. He seems knowledgeable. He seems sharp. But then he's got these weird positions on the edges. And it's like, that's why I'm so uncertain. Where it's with Bernie, it's like, I'm not sure I agree with literally everything Bernie talks about, but my God, do my views and Bernie's views match up like 98%? Jer makes a good point, which is sort of what I noted earlier on. Bernie Sanders just plain didn't get enough time to speak in relation to the fact that he is such a key figure in the contest, and given that he has so much to say, and again, given that his views, and this shouldn't be necessarily a reason you get to speak in and of itself, but because he fundamentally disagrees with other people, I do think at the end of the day, he should be given more time to speak because he's offering substantive debate. It's not just four neoliberals agreeing about 99% of things. It's that on almost every issue, Bernie Sanders is adding something real, something different, something that actually makes the viewer think, hey, politics has a wider dimension than I thought in the days before Bernie Sanders. Yeah, like MJM, again, like whether we're talking about sex workers' rights, we're just talking about morality policing, you're right, that, there's a lot of risk to somebody like that who is, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but is largely a single issue candidate, and on an issue that's important, whether you agree with it or not, discussions of basic income are very important. And it's just when these candidates talk about other issues, I sort of feel like they lose their edge. They're not prepared. It's like when Yang was asked about domestic violence or women's rights, he was like, well, basic income. And it's like, okay, that makes sense, but it's more than that. Or when he was asked about climate change, he was like, well, basic income and everyone move away from the coasts. And I was like, no, buddy, you need more there. You need more. Like, you're a sharp man, like, figure it out. Yeah, well, 100%. And that goes to the argument. An apologetic neoliberal, that goes to the argument that Mayo Pete's used, but also that Klobuchar is used as well. And I think Hillary Clinton did, which is their argument is that free tuition is bad because it will make education free for rich people, for millionaires and billionaires, the kids of millionaires and billionaires. And that would be, in a sense, subsidizing the rich at the hands of regular working class taxpayers. But what these people willfully ignore, is that if you listen to Bernie Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren's plan, those things are levied off massive tax increases on the rich. And so that in some ways, you're going to have situations where, yes, a rich person or a well-off person might get free university under a free university plan, but their taxes might go up by more than the cost of tuition they saved, in which case it's not really free tuition. It being free at the point of use is important to ensure that education has quality and that everyone feels invested in it, but it's not free in the broader sense because it's collectively paid for through our taxes, and the rich, rightfully so, should bear a disproportionate burden on that. That's why that's important. The neoliberal candidates ignore that because, again, they already have quality educations and do so for their children. And so they want to make it look like, free university is going to subsidize their kids' tuition, when in reality, they just want to preserve, again, elite education for themselves and those like themselves, right? Like, that's really what it's about at the end of the day, at least from my perspective. And that encapsulates, like, the way Pete Buttigieg and the way Amy Klobuchar and the way so many others talk about these issues, right? Talk about free education and things like that. And they get away with it because no one in mainstream media either understands the false nature of their argument or cares because, again, they are often part of the same class. Yeah, Delabra, that's a great point. That one of the arguments in favor of universal social programs is, there's a bunch of arguments in favor of them. They're efficient. You don't waste money determining and waste resources determining who gets the service or who doesn't. You just give everybody the service and you pay for it through general taxation revenues. Very efficient. It also, as you note, makes it harder to tear down politically, because if everyone uses it, you're more likely to find that people across social classes support that particular policy. Whereas if you have a means-tested program that only helps the bottom quarter of the population, those people's services will constantly be under attack by forces that want to take that money and hand it out through tax cuts or whatever reason, because a lot of people aren't invested in the quality of those services. But it needs to also be said, and I actually disagree. I don't think like there should be private universities necessarily. I'm maybe a bit more radical on that, or I come from a Canadian context where we have very few private universities. But if you look at the Sanders plan, it doesn't apply to private universities. So if we're talking about the very richest, the most elite people, they don't send their kids, in most cases, to state universities and colleges. So this argument that we're going to make tuition free for millionaires and billionaires by making, the local community college or the local state university free is likely a disingenuous argument, because those people's kids already go to the Ivy Leagues, or they go to the small liberal arts colleges, the very exclusive ones, which wouldn't be covered under these free tuition programs. It's just a wall of disingenuousness. Unapologetic? Well, I mean, I don't know what your exam is about. If your exam is about contemporary American politics, maybe this isn't the worst place to be. I will say, though, that you're right. I mean, some of them have these 2-year post-secondary degrees. I don't understand the American system as much as the Canadian one. We don't really do the community college into university transitions as much. Like, we don't really do the associate's degree as much. We have colleges which are usually more vocational training. So you go to a college, most of which are also public, and you go there to become like a tradesperson, or you go there to become an administrative assistant, or you go there to become like a medical receptionist and learn the specific skill sets. Sometimes you can transition those skill sets into university courses, but they're more distinct, right? If that makes any sense. We don't really do the 2-year program thing. I mean, I think honestly, the way you have to do it is you have to make universal education from pre-K to PhD 100% free at the point of use, from guarantee someone's education until 18, and then afterwards, you might have to, prove an aptitude to get your education, but your only thing holding you back from that education should be your ability to do the work during that program of education, and not your bank account or your parents' bank account. Yeah, see, MJM, I didn't know. I didn't know. I know, like, the U.S. has way more community colleges, right? Like, and things like that. Canada has less of that community college culture. Again, our colleges being more purely vocational and less a sort of, university light. We don't really have that. But, I mean, in my view, all education should be universal and should be free at the point of use. And at the post-secondary level should be free to anybody who has the aptitude to achieve that educational training. Well, unapologetic, I don't know how much we're going to help you tonight, but you never know when this will pay off. Yeah, MJM, that's a great point. I've noticed some of those things. Sometimes you'll do a couple years at a community college, and then you'll go and say like a technologist program, and those credits will transfer into an engineering program. Some nursing programs do that as well, where you'll do a bit of nursing training and then finish it off at the university level. That's a great point. And often it's done to help at smaller schools and smaller universities. That's also university to university. I think Cape Breton University, which is a university, not a college, allows you to do the first 2 years of an engineering degree there, and then you go to an engineering school in Halifax, where they have more resources, and you finish off there. So it allows you to stay local for the first half of your education, at least. Yeah, and there's cégeps in Quebec, which are, of course, are a whole different kettle of fish, which is almost like high school plus in some ways. We don't have that anywhere else in Canada. My thoughts on Gabbard versus Pete. I think Gabbard got the best of Pete there. I mean, Pete tried to counter her by saying she met with, like Assad and stuff. And I mean, that was a bit weird, I have to say. But I think at the end of the day, she hammered him home there. She was like, look, we're veterans here. She approached him on that equal front, and she said that you're being rash when you basically you said you'd send soldiers to Mexico. And look, it's what's important there is less this question of who was right between Gabbard and Buttigieg in this moment. What was really important here was that Gabbard seemed to get Pete shook. And as I noted earlier, Pete Buttigieg sounded aggressive. He sounded mean. He sounded impatient. He sounded annoyed that he had to answer this question from Gabbard, or that he had to have this discussion, almost like he was above her. And when you looked at his face when Gabbard was responding to his comments to her, he had this look of almost like fear on his face, like a mixture of anger and fear. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. Let me know in the comments if you guys agree or disagree, please, because I don't know because I just saw this just before I came on to be with you guys here. But it really does seem like he was shook. And I think that matters more than any of the particulars on the question. Because if we're being honest, the question wasn't that important. What mattered there was Pete's very, very polished and strong veneer. One of his strong suits. Like, whether you like him or not, Pete is a very composed politician. That's a great skill set to have. And that broke for a moment when Gabbard questioned him. Bernie mentions his donor total. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great to see. Bernie, at the end of the day, really needed to hammer home that he's got a broad base. And donors aren't everything, but donors are very important. And what Bernie has shown is he has more donors than pretty much anybody. And he has more donors in donating regular amounts of money, like periodic donations. And he's got the most small donors, and he still raises a ton of money. And as we've seen before, this isn't new. Bernie Sanders has donors everywhere. A lot of the other candidates have donor clusters. Bernie Sanders has donors everywhere in the United States. It's a sign that everywhere there are people who believe in him to give their hard-earned money. And the people giving Bernie money, they're middle-class people like teachers, and they're people who work at places like Walmart. People who don't make a lot of money, but are giving the little bit they can to a candidate they believe in. And you better believe that those people are motivated. They're not just supporting Bernie because they got to pick somebody. They believe in Bernie Sanders, right? And I think that it's good to hear that. I mean, I don't know if it worked for him. I think that protected Pete from totally getting bombarded there. It seems like he cut some of it. But again, when Gabbard responded back, the look on his face was one of nervousness, at least. It wasn't calm and cool and collected Pete as we normally see him. Habibati, Obama will endorse Pete. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys think Obama's going to make an endorsement? I don't know if he is. I mean, in 2018, Obama didn't really make, in 2016, I mean, it was clear he wanted Hillary, but he didn't really make an endorsement until the contest was effectively over. He didn't make an endorsement early. I don't know if Barack Obama is going to make a formal I back this guy or I back this girl endorsement. I don't know if I'm going to see that. I think what you're going to see is Obama push a position which leads people to go towards somebody like Biden or Buttigieg without saying names. So he's going to do what he's already done, which is say, for example, tell people that he's worried the party is moving too far left and they have to keep electability in mind. And I think at the end of the day, he doesn't need to say names because people will go there for him. If he says someone's name, he sort of loses that power as the neutral observer, right? As the neutral former president. He doesn't need to say names, at least not now. Now, maybe if they're desperate and it's like the final few weeks or months, and it looks like Bernie Sanders is going to win this, right? And then there's we got to try everything. Then maybe Obama will come out and endorse the person most likely to beat Bernie. but I don't know if you're going to see an Obama endorsement until a person has effectively won, and then Obama will officially endorse the nominee. That's how I think this is going to happen. I mean, like I get Pills Bandy. I think that's the only case, as I just noted. I think that's the only case you'll see Obama make an endorsement, is if he's terrified of Bernie actually winning, and it's the only shot he has to stop it. But right now, he's like, if I don't have to play that card, I don't want to have to play that card. And so what he's doing now, as I noted, is he's going out and he's saying, don't move too far left. Consider respectability and electability. Consider being, cautious, pragmatic progressives. Again, he's not saying names, either negatively or positively. But what effectively he's doing is he's discouraging support, especially for Bernie, but a little bit for Elizabeth Warren, and he's encouraging support for Buttigieg and Biden. It doesn't matter which one, at least not right now. But Kieran makes a good point. Would Obama endorse Pete over Biden? See, that's why I don't think he would say unless he's absolutely desperate. Because if he endorses Biden and then it looks like he's just going for his own guy and he might make a mistake and it could hurt Pete Buttigieg, who might actually be the better challenger. And if he endorses Buttigieg, it looks like he's abandoning the man who was his vice president for 8 years. So on a personal level and ideological level, it makes the most sense for him to avoid making an endorsement at whatever the cost and then go into just endorsing the nominee and continue to basically make shadow endorsements by your remarks, hopefully hoping that voters and media and analysts will read your intent for you and then say, okay, well, obviously Obama is endorsing anybody but Sanders and maybe even Warren. Know that. And Obama doesn't have to say anything, but the message gets across anyway. That would be my strategy if I was Obama, to be fair. I would be trying not to make the formal endorsement. Why haven't any debate moderation brought up that Obama referred to Medicare all as a good new idea? I don't know. That's a great question. And that's something that I've sort of even forgot about a little bit too, if I'm being honest. Obama did say that. But the question is, what does Obama mean when he says Medicare for all? Because as we've seen in this primary process, only Bernie Sanders has been clear about what Medicare for all means. Other people like Buttigieg and Harris and Warren at various points have used the terminology Medicare for all, even Tulsi Gabbard. And when they're pressed for specifics, they all really mean a public option, which is sort of an expansion of Medicare, but not Medicare for all. It's the Pete Buttigieg Medicare for all who want it. And I don't know exactly where Obama stands on that, but that's a good point. You could counter the argument by saying, well, Obama said don't move too far left, but he also called Medicare for all a good idea. And so you could say that maybe Obama himself isn't quite sure about where to go. But I would suggest that when Obama says Medicare for all, he means Pete Buttigieg's Medicare for all who want it. I think that's what he means. Somebody said Bernie said he's pro-Israel. Bernie did say he was pro-Israel. But what Bernie Sanders also said is he believes in the rights of Palestinians, which no one else in this contest would have the guts to say. Let's be 100% real. Bernie Sanders is not anti-Israel, but Bernie Sanders is the only one in this contest, I think, who consistently talks about human rights like in places like Palestine. And I think that's vital. Again, Bernie Sanders is the only one talking about the rights of indigenous people in Bolivia. And he's talked about Palestine and Israel a lot, noting that Israel might be an ally to the United States, but they are not above critical reproach. Is Bernie's position on Israel all that it should be? I mean, that's a common criticism he gets, but I think that his position is probably one of the better ones. Vegas says, I think whoever he endorses will be targeted by the right. I mean, certainly. Whoever gets endorsed by Obama will be targeted. Although, don't forget, Obama left office popular. I think much worse would be getting a Hillary Clinton endorsement, who remains unpopular with most Americans. So, Obama's endorsement would probably be a good thing eventually. But I don't think it's going to happen during the, like, once somebody maybe gets, the contest doesn't have to be over, but like once somebody effectively wins the enough delegates. So like Hillary Clinton at some point maybe didn't formally have all the delegates she needed, but effectively she had defeated Bernie Sanders, whatever you think of that travesty of a process. She defeated Bernie Sanders and then he endorsed Hillary Clinton after it was over. He didn't endorse Hillary when the Iowa caucuses were on, right? And I think that's a distinction. Will peak at the Kamala effect? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think he was destroyed quite as roundly as Kamala Harris was by Tulsi Gabbard. But I do think it was a bad look for him. And it's going to take a little bit of sheen off. And this, because that happened early on in the debate, it might be the impression people get. Did that end him like it ended Kamala? I don't think so. But it certainly wasn't a good way to end a debate. Yeah, see, I get your point. I get your that why he might endorse someone like Pete Buttigieg. I get it. There's a historic nature there. But I personally don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't see Obama making an endorsement yet. I don't see it yet. But I think Unapologetic is right that Obama's endorsement would mean a lot. For Pete Buttigieg, it would mean so for Biden it would mean more for Pete than for Biden. Because for Biden, it would matter, but a lot of Biden's support is already baked into the fact that he was Obama's guy for 8 years. If Pete Buttigieg would get Barack Obama's endorsement, it could help him both in general, making him clearly a frontrunner, but specifically, it would give him credibility amongst African Americans. Now, of course, African Americans aren't just going to vote for a man because Barack Obama said they should, but it would bring him some, notable gain in African American support. And that would be crucial if Pete Buttigieg wants to win. I don't know if it's going to happen. XVX says, damn, I missed it. Who did the best? Really hard to say because the format was awful. I'm biased for Bernie, but I didn't like the format. Klobuchar was given far too much time given how irrelevant she is. I think Bernie did really well. I think Warren had an awful answer on how she wants more people to serve in the military. I didn't like that at all. Joe Biden was really bad. Joe Biden was real bad, guys. Like saying President China, President Saudi Arabia, saying that he's got the support of the only black woman ever to be in the Senate when there's a black woman currently in the Senate that is running against him. It's like he had a really bad night. I think like one of the reasons you might see Buttigieg rise, guys, is because you're seeing this. You're seeing Biden crash and burn whenever he's in front of a camera. I like Nina, and I agree that if Bernie wins, like, there's no official rule, of course, but if Bernie wins, he would do well to, one, pick somebody young, because, again, fair or not, Bernie Sanders is an old man. There'll be a lot of questions about his longevity. Pick somebody young, pick somebody pick a woman, preferably racialized, although maybe not, maybe he doesn't have to. Picking Nina Turner would be very interesting. I wonder if it would be perceived as too inside baseball. picking somebody that's basically working for his campaign as a staffer might not be seen as a good move. I wonder if he goes with another politician. He goes with a young woman who's racialized. I think, and this doesn't work as ideologically necessarily, but I think he could pick someone like Stacey Abrams. I think like a Southern black woman who can reach to African Americans, who isn't necessarily seen as a radical, could be the sort of move that Bernie Sanders could make. I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying he shouldn't pick Nina, but I'm saying that he might go with somebody who's less from the Sanders wing of the party, but still represents that diversity. And I get... Yeah, see, yeah, Obama not endorsing anybody till Biden's... I think that's a good point. I think Obama's got, like he's got some loyalty to Biden. I get it. I think that he's going to wait at least until then. I think he's hoping he doesn't have to make the endorsement. I think that's the point I'm making. Yeah, unapologetic neoliberal. He asked Obama... yeah, of course, no one believes that. He would take Obama's endorsement if he was offered it. But, I understand him wanting to save face. Kieran says, how does Biden poll so well? Well, I mean, look, part of this is maybe we don't understand. I don't want to assume, but like Biden's support is overwhelmingly concentrated amongst older folks. They showed that tonight on the polls that the MSNBC was looking at. And they showed that this is a relatively close race between Warren, Sanders, and Biden. It's pretty close between those three candidates. Any one of them could win. But when you ask people that are 65 and older, 44% of them back Biden. He's got almost the majority of support in like a 10-person race. And so I don't know what old people believe in, but whatever old people believe in, it's Joe Biden. So for instance, and I don't understand that. I think part of it is name recognition. He's got the most of it, by far. And people are like, I know him, I'm backing him. Some of it's inertia. It's like they backed him at the beginning because he was Obama's guy, and they still back him because, again, people often, maybe they don't make a move until it's actually time to vote. And another factor is because he was Obama's guy. He has a lot of support amongst people who are nostalgic for the Obama years. Whether it's nostalgic because they loved Obama, or whether it's because in the age of Trump, Obama looks way better than he has any right to be remembered as, because compared to Trump, it's easy to look good. But he's got a lot of support in those three manners. And that's really what Biden's support is built on. And he's got a lot of status quo support from the party as well. The question is, will he hold on to that if there's a neoliberal alternative like Pete Buttigieg on the rise, right? I think that he's got support now because it's like they don't want Warren. They especially don't want Sanders. So it's like, we'll take Biden, I guess, but like he keeps embarrassing himself, and so maybe they want an alternative. I don't know if polls are rigged. I don't want to go and accuse pollsters of rigging things. I do think that at times polls can be unreflective of reality, but I don't know if they're purposely done to mislead people. Why not ask Warren for the VP? I assume you're talking about Bernie. There's a few issues with that. One, Warren herself is an older woman. It probably doesn't look that good. To have both people be so much older, because even Mike Pence is a little bit younger, right? And if you remember, Obama picked an older VP, but Obama was quite a young president. And so I can't remember the last time that both the president and vice president would effectively be in their 70s and 80s. It's pretty odd. Another problem with that is they're both seen as on the left, and it might be seen, again, I don't agree with this, but it might be seen as wise for Bernie to pick somebody more quote-unquote centrist. Another factor is that both Warren and Sanders are from the Northeast. They're both from New England states, in a particular part of the country. And it can be beneficial to pick a VP from a part of the country that you have weaknesses in, or that your party has weaknesses in. So somebody from like Trump picked somebody. Trump didn't pick another New Yorker. Trump picked somebody from the Midwest. Hillary Clinton didn't pick a New Yorker. She picked someone from Virginia, which is a northern state on the map, but it's got a specific character. You know, Barack Obama picked an old white man to give credibility to his campaign. Somebody, yes, from the north in a sense, but Obama was a Midwestern Illinois candidate. He picked somebody from New England, an old white kind of traditional politician. So Bernie isn't going to want to pick Warren because she's too similar to Bernie. Another factor is that I don't know if Warren would want to be vice president. I think in a scenario where Bernie becomes president, Warren might want a role in cabinet, and that role might be more substantive than just being vice president. She might have bigger goals in mind. And the same could be said for Bernie. If Elizabeth Warren becomes president, he might have a different role to play, right? No, I know that Nina Turner is a politician, but Nina currently right now, her main role is effectively as a Bernie Sanders like staffer in some ways. She's not currently an office holder. I'm just saying it would be weird relative to what we usually see. That's not me saying we shouldn't do it. That's just an example of why it might not happen, right? Like, you know, he might pick an existing politician, or a Stacey Abrams type. I'm not exactly sure who, but I don't think it will be Nina Turner. I think Nina Turner is going to play a major role in Bernie Sanders' campaign and government, but I don't know if it'll be as his vice president. I mean, I agree with the rationale for picking Nina, though. She's fantastic. Fantastic speaker. Can really pump up a crowd. But I don't know if that's the way they're going. I don't know if Tulsi's going to run as an independent. I mean, if she does, it'll look really bad, especially if Bernie wins. That'll look really bad. A lot of Bernie supporters also have a sympathy to Tulsi, but if she looks like she's going to run as an independent, that's going to look really bad. I mean, about millennials not answering phones. I mean, good pollsters now use multiple methods. They don't just use phones, they use online. And aggregates of pollsters should not just capture telephone polls. But you're right in noting that when you look at a specific poll, study the methodology. Because if the methodology oversamples older people, you could find that the poll doesn't accurately reflect the electorate. And the smaller the sample size, combined with demographic sampling issues, could make a poll very, very suspect. AOC for Bernie's BP doesn't work. AOC's too young. You got to be 35 to be president. And so I don't know if technically you have to be 35 to be vice president, but effectively she can't be vice president because by the time Bernie's term is done, she still wouldn't be 35. So AOC can't be VP. Again, that would be really cool, but again, you run into similar issues. Yes, she's racialized and she's young and she's a woman, but she's also from the Northeast, and you might want somebody from a different geographic profile. Yeah, no, MJM, that's a great point. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah. I mean, look, I do think at some point, guys, AOC might well run for president or run for Senate or take a major role. I think that Bernie Sanders has said that he has a role for AOC in his cabinet, in his administration, if he wins. And I don't think he was joking. He probably would offer her some position in his government. The question is like, what's Tulsi's next or AOC's next move? And I think she could certainly run for Senate. She needs to pick the right moment to find an opening in New York State. But if she can get the nomination, if she can win the nomination, she'll likely carry that statewide vote fairly easily. And, Senator, once she's in the Senate, that could set her up well for an eventual presidential run. Yeah, I think unapologetic neoliberal, you do want somebody who supports Medicare for all. That's going to be Bernie Sanders' signature piece of legislation. So somebody who supports M4A has to be a priority. That's my view, at least. That's my view. They have to offer that support. AOC 2040 or 2032? I'd have to work out the math. I don't know if we have to wait that long. I mean, Mayo Pete is running, and he's like 37. So if AOC is like 27, then she could run. Yeah, it would be like 20. Yeah, you're right. 2028 or 2020 or 2032 would be like the window for her to run, depending on that. If she wants to run at a similar age to Pete Buttigieg, that's when she could run. Of course, it might take longer than that. She might have other goals in mind. Who knows, right? But she could certainly run for president. And I think that, God willing, Bernie is still with us at that point. But I think that she is part of that movement that Bernie Sanders has played a big role in building. And she's going to be part of that next generation of that movement. And I do think that, Bernie Sanders could well become president. But I also think that one of the people inspired by Bernie directly will one day also be president. And it could be someone like AOC or someone like, Lee Carter, even in Virginia, if he ever makes the step up to state, to nation, to federal politics. Like some of these DSA people, some of these Justice Democrat people, one of them could well be president one day. Is she eligible for 2024, Pills Bandy? I'd have to look at the math. I mean, technically, but I'm operating under the hopeful assumption that President Bernie Sanders will be running for his second term. So I don't know if I'm going to consider that one. I don't know if the Democrats win this time, and I think they are. I'm not trying to be too optimistic, but I think Trump's going to lose the next election. That's just me. And so I think that the probably that person will get to run again. And I don't know if that'll be AOC's turn. I do think, if she is planning a run for 2028, that could be a realistic possibility, although I don't know. Jonathan asks, Jonathan, great to see you. Would Trump use unconstitutional force to stay in office, even if he is voted out? I don't know. I don't know about that. He might try to challenge it in court. Something tells me he will not go gracefully. But will he use unconstitutional power? And you like that word if I'm being very deliberate with it. I have to say that, while he might consider it, he might be counseled against it. I think. So we got a report. 1 second. I just got a troll here to deal with. All right, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. In October of 2024, she'll be 35. Okay, well then, I think she could run then. I have to look up the rules. Yeah, so Jonathan, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, she could run. She could run. The question would be, or that Trump would have this constitutional maybe desire to subvert it, but I don't think that would happen. I think the most you would see is Trump using the courts in a close election to try to hold on to power. I think that would be the biggest thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's by election day or if it's by swearing day or if it's by a certain point in the nomination process. That's something I would need to look up. So that's a good question, though. In any case, I think that it might take her a little bit longer than 2024. She might want to give a go in the Senate. She might want to maybe run for the Senate in a couple years and then run out a Senate term. And so that puts her into the late 2020s. So yeah, I mean, all in all, I think this debate was awful. Like, for those of you, because I mean, I have a lot of so like this debate was like awful, man. This the way you could rig it against Bernie, man. Like, okay, a lot of my viewers are Canadian. I don't know who here is Canadian, who here is American, but I cover both Canadian and American politics, sort of like David Dole on the Rational National, but I do more Canadian than David, although I do American, as you can see. And at the end of the day, like, the way they rigged this debate against Bernie is worse than anything I saw in the Canadian election in terms of rigging. Like, our debates are way more equal in terms of how they allot time, in terms of how they give all the parties time to speak on issues, in terms of how parties are given time to respond to questions and ask them. And like, this didn't happen here. And I get it. There's like 10 people on the stage, but the way the questions are asked is that the questions aren't asked to everybody enough. They need to have more questions that everyone has to answer. And I get it. That's not as good for TV. Like, because then people will get bored after person 7. But on some of these really important questions, we're not actually getting answers from like the people we need to hear from. So when you ask people about a question and we only hear from 2 or 3 of them, we don't actually get a sense for what the field thinks. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to announce your VP yet. I think it's a little early. I know, like, sometimes you do it to try to save your campaign. Like, I remember, didn't Ted Cruz announce Carly Fiorina as his VP and then quit, like, literally a day or 2 later? Am I remembering that wrong? Sorry, you might see my cat here in the back of the stream. This is Smokey. So, like, you want to be careful about when you nominate your VP. Yeah, this is Smokey. You can say hi to him. Yeah, so say hi, Smokey. Let me show you guys. Smokey is our cat here. Let me bring him right here. Come on, Smokey. Are you camera shy? There he is. He is right here. This is Smokey. Say hi. Yeah, see, like, so like, yeah, so I think our questions are better. I think they're certainly having 10 people on the stage makes it harder. But yeah. And so, yeah, so everyone laughed at him. Sorry, just one sec. Yeah. So, I mean, you want to time your VP announcement right. If you announce too early, I think it makes you sound like you're assuming you're going to win the nomination, if that makes any sense. You're already thinking about the general because you've named your VP. But I think if you name it too late, you might not get that crucial bump you need in a close nomination. It's far too early to talk about any of that right now, I think. But that timing is important. Great to see that Smokey got the biggest bump of the night. Great to see. Yeah. Well, John, I totally get it. 100% that Smokey is the star of the show. So great to hear. Definitely caused an uptick in the comments. Justin asks if I'm using a new camera, loving the higher frame rate. Actually, no. What I've done is I've really worked on a lot of my settings. A couple things I've done is, one, the lighting is better because I got a new tripod with a ring light on it. And that just makes the camera quality better because it evens out the light so the camera doesn't have to work hard to do it. So it reduces graininess. And one thing I've done is through OBS, I've basically like overclocked my camera and I make it run at 1080p 60 FPS, which it doesn't do in the native program. And I've got new internet at home. We just upgraded our internet from like a 10 gigabit to like a 30 gigabit line, basically, in terms of upload. So we have way more upload speed right now. So I am able to up the bit rate to make the stream at least something more approaching, the quality you get when I record. So it should be a better experience in terms of quality of image, but also frame rate. If there are issues, though, let me know, because I am still working through settings. Yeah, I don't think it would be an issue of being seen as misogynistic or as racist. I think going too early for a pick, though, it makes you look like you're acting as the presumptive nominee, even when it might be too early to make that move. Yeah, unapologetic neoliberal. Uh, it's a Yeah, sorry, that's what I probably meant though, John Allen. I don't mean I think I made a mistake there when I said 10. I think I'm not sure what it is. I could look up the number, but it's the upgraded line from Kojiko. I think that might be what it is. In any case, it's significantly faster than what I had before, which improves the streaming quality. Yeah, the Canadian debate's not so much for entertainment. I would say so. That's probably fair. There was a bit of pomp and circumstance. I don't know if you recalled the official debates in Ottawa. They had all the supporters outside chanting, and they all came in, and there was all these crowds. There was a bit of that excitement, but you're right. It wasn't as massive a thing as the American debates were. And certainly, if you compare like the NDP or party leadership debates to these, because don't forget, these are not presidential debates. These are still the primaries. It's like the pomp and circumstances are way higher. MSNBC mad at Tulsi for taking down their darling. I mean, I could see that. I think the mainstream media loves Pete. They love Pete because yes, he is sharp. The man's sharp, well spoken, but he's like the perfect neoliberal shill. Like he's perfect. He's like into big tech, raising the most money from rich people, from billionaires. Believes in almost nothing, so he'll say anything. I totally see why mainstream media loves Pete Buttigieg. And again, Tulsi Gabbard isn't my favorite, but she was right to go after Pete tonight, and I think that somebody had to do it. Pete Buttigieg got off tonight way too easy. For instance, on the questions about race tonight, no one brought up Pete Buttigieg's controversies within his own police department as mayor. Pete Buttigieg has almost no experience, and the experience he had is awful, right? So it's like more needed to be said there. I felt like that was a failure on the debate, moderators, to hold him to account, to give him the tough question he needs. But it was also sort of a failure on his opponents to hammer that point home. Yeah, Pills Bandy Doughboy. Yeah, there was a lot of that in those debates. I'm not saying I don't want to romanticize our debates. I just want to suggest that, I don't think they're a rigged process. I feel our media is super, antagonistic to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. And if you recall that special that Rosemary Barton did, where they, met with quote-unquote undecided voters, and, Rosemary Barton, tried to lecture Jagmeet Singh for, 5 minutes about how he didn't know about economics. I'm not saying our media is fair, but I'm saying the debates themselves were structured at least to be fair. Whereas this was very clearly like done to set certain narratives by the questions asked and by who got those questions and by the time allotted and on and on and on. Justin, you saw my Twitter bio, postdoc U of T. Did I ever run for student office? I'm a student there and considering running. Well, technically a postdoc isn't a student position. It's kind of a staff position, although my whole situation with U of T is complicated because I have a federal research grant, and that money is provided by the federal government. And technically U of T doesn't pay me that. So I'm not an employee of U of T, but more like an affiliated researcher with U of T. But it's not a student position. I've never actually ran for student government either as an undergrad or as a grad student. I did my undergrad at UNB in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I did my master's and PhD at Queen's in Kingston. And I never ran for student government. I did serve on my union executive for the teaching assistants and teaching fellows for a bit at Queen's during my early years of my PhD, but not on the student government side. But if you want to run, go ahead and run. I mean, I'm not sure of the specific student structures of U of T. Like there are obviously like university-wide governance, but there's also faculty governance. So like look at what interests you and trying to balance that with your social life and your academics and make a go of it. It's you make a contribution. It's important. Delaneyacks are surging to 2%. Why is John Delaney still in this? Like, why is he still in? I get he has the money. It doesn't really matter. But, like, look, Beto O'Rourke kind of knew that, like, he was done and, like, did the right thing and dropped out. And so he would be one less distraction. And it's like, I don't know why John Delaney is still in this. Yeah, unapologetic. I get the legalistic approach. I get it. But it's still a kind of case that it's like we have so little to go on with Pete. But what we do have is so troubling. I think it'd be worth an attack. Yeah, Kieran, yeah, when I talk, well, the British media is like, the British media attacks on Jeremy Corbyn are worse than anything I've seen in North America, is what I'm saying. Like, the British media is so, and the tabloid culture in Britain is worse than is so much worse than the tabloid culture in North America, and so much more explicitly political. Like, they have so much more quote unquote, like what I would call fake news, and I'm not trying to be biased, like, but it's like literally fake news about Jeremy Corbyn, and in a way that, like, in the United States election, there was a ton of fake news about Hillary Clinton, but like the media bias against Corbyn is systemic. It's like nothing I've seen in North America. Yeah, unapologetic. Yeah, the CBC's quality can really be uneven. The problem with the CBC is that the CBC is really dozens and dozens and dozens of sub institutions. There's the TV, but there's like different elements of the segments. And there's radio, but there's different radio channels, and there's different shows on each of those channels. And I've done a lot of CBC media, and there's some great people at the CBC, and then there's some awful people at the CBC. And I certainly think that in terms of their political journalism, there's definitely like a right of center bias. Maybe not far right, but sort of like a center right bias. And it's definitely a lot of animosity at the CBC towards the NDP. And the CBC is really bad at determining what gets coverage. So the CBC, for instance, will spend hours and hours and hours about a couple, dozen, a couple hundred at most, like protesters for the oil industry in Alberta. But yet they'll spend less time on 500,000 young people protesting for climate justice in Montreal. And it's like the CBC reinforces these false narratives about our economic and social order through what they cover and don't cover, right? And like it's a real issue. I mean, I don't know how to fix the CBC, right? I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is. In terms of fixing it, it's hard because, like, what do you do to fix it? A government gets elected and says, I'm going to fix the CBC. How do you do that without interfering in the CBC? Put another way, are the CBC's biases due to government failure, or are they just based on the biases that become inherent to the fact that, like, the people, the sort of people who become elite media voices tend to have a bias against working class and left politics? Put another way, does it matter who's in charge at the government level? Because unless you want to interfere at the CBC and make it like a state broadcaster rather than a public broadcaster, I don't know what you could do. You could give them different priorities. The chairperson that you pick for the CBC could be given a different priority, but like the institutional culture there might be bigger and deeper than any one government. Marianne Wilson, I honestly didn't know she wasn't in. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, there's nothing forcing anyone to drop out. The only thing that forces you to drop out is if you can't afford to run your campaign anymore. But if you're independently wealthy, or if you're not really running anymore, like if Marianne Wilson never really had an infrastructure to pay for at all, then you can just say you're running without having to do anything. The only thing that forces you to not run is when you eventually lose and somebody's declared the nominee and the contest is over. But it's like normally people drop out due to cost issues and just to like stop cluttering the field. Yeah, CJ, I mean, I think that the debate process is sort of helps with that stages of winnowing down. Candidates don't have to officially withdraw. But, you know, we basically had 2 debates of 10 people, and now for the last couple, we've been on one stage. I don't know, like, when the next debate is and what the cutoff will be, but, like, you know, the eventual goal, I think, will be to narrow the field down to the half dozen or so people who have significant support. You know, aka, you know, more than 5%. I think that'll be important. Yeah, Wayne Messam, CJ, like, I cover politics. I do not even know that name. Like, really. Yeah, like, unapologetic makes a great point. And this is going to be especially important for Bernie in this really big field, is that Bernie might not be winning on most of the polls, but Bernie's support is rock solid and very motivated. And in Iowa, as you note, specifically in Iowa, Bernie's got a lot of motivation. But motivation matters the most in Iowa because, as you guys know, in Iowa, you don't just show up to vote and then leave. You have to be willing to stay there for a few hours. You got to dedicate yourself to the process, and that's going to benefit a type like Sanders, I feel, who has like a base of real passionate militant supporters. And it's great because I don't think very many of Bernie people are going to switch. So as candidates drop out, Bernie Sanders will pick up support, but I don't know if the people Bernie have now are going to leave him. I don't know very many soft Bernie Sanders supporters. The people who like Bernie, they love Bernie, right? See, Luke, Wayne is just a meme now, but I don't know. Memes are recognizable and travel well. I do not know who Wayne Messam is. Like, I do not know who he is. Was he on any of the debates? Like, I watched them. I'm like, was he in some of the early debates, or was he just never in any of the debates? Like, I don't know. I don't know. So, like, let me know in the comments. Like, I'm actually asking. I don't know if he was in any of the debates. Yeah, I mean, there's still people who want celebrities as presidents. I mean, like, some people want The Rock to run, like Dwayne Johnson to run. Kanye is considering a run at some point. More than a few people wanted Oprah to run, right? Luke, thanks so much, right? Like, because I'm trying to remember. Like, I keep forgetting. Sometimes you forget some of the candidates. Now I recognize most of them, but I forget Swalwell. I keep forgetting him, that he's on this thing. I know all the rest. Like, all the rest are pretty recognizable. But at first, it's, yeah, like, I've never heard of him. He must have just, like, as you know, joined late, never got on the polling, and therefore never really got mentioned. Yeah, John, you're right. Bernie Sanders is not a flash in the pan. He's the exact opposite of that. Bernie Sanders has a consistent, generations-long record of taking the right stands even when those stands are not popular. That's why people love Bernie. Kieran, I wonder if there's a major amount of Bernie, Amy fence sitters. Like, I could see some people, for instance, that really like Warren and Bernie. I can see that. I could see some people who are like Tulsi Bernie people. I've even seen some people, I get this one less, but that are Yang Bernie switchers. I could see lots of people say, like, I like Buttigieg and Biden. But I don't know how many Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders switchers there would be. Pills Bandy, Bernie run as an independent? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. Bernie Sanders is an honest man, and I think by participating in this process, he is acknowledging that he will back the winner of the process, or at the very least, he won't interfere with them. And like, a lot of people complained that Bernie didn't do enough for Clinton after 2016, but that's a lie. Bernie campaigned for Hillary way harder than Hillary campaigned for Barack Obama. Way, way harder. Bernie Sanders has sort of said that I'm going to give it my best and I'm going to back the person to defeat Donald Trump. And I think that Bernie Sanders will do that. Now, whether you agree with that or not is another issue, but I don't see Bernie running as an independent. I think if Bernie loses, he's going to back the nominee and he's going to go back to the Senate and he's going to do the best job he can. Yeah. Yeah, CJ, yeah. If Bernie would have done it last time, or Bernie would have run as an independent without ever seeking the Democratic nomination. Like, he would have just run as an independent, or run as a socialist candidate, or run as the Democratic socialist nominee. I feel like he thinks the best path is to win it through the Democratic Party and to achieve that objective in that way. Unapologetic, you make a good point. At some points, Bernie was campaigning harder for Hillary than Hillary was for Hillary. That's important to note. Bernie Sanders worked his ass off for Hillary. 100%. Bernie Sanders is a man of his word. And I think he's going to back the eventual nominee. And whether or not, like, people feel that person deserves Bernie's support is another question. But Bernie is a man of his word. He's a man of honor. And I think that he doesn't want to be seen as a sore loser. And he is going to back the winner. I mean, that's my view. I mean, yeah, a lot of people have talked about Michelle Obama. And to be fair, Michelle Obama's not strictly a celebrity. She doesn't really have electoral experience. But, like, regardless of what you think of her ideologically, she's a very accomplished and bright and qualified woman. I could certainly see her entering politics, but I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. Like, could you see Michelle Obama running for politics? Yeah. If you look at her resume, she's got the resume to be a politician. But I don't think she would run. I don't think she's going to be running for president anytime soon. Yeah, running as an independent, even when you do have billions unapologetic, it doesn't work. Like, Ross Perot ran as an independent and got a lot of support, but, like, it's not ever going to be enough to win. Eugene Debs in, like, 1908, 1904, got, like, 6 or 7% as a socialist. And, like, that was really good. Like, the socialists have never done anywhere near that big. And we're talking 6 or 7%. This isn't Canada where the NDP, the CCF NDP might not win elections, but where we can have a consistent role in the country winning 10 to 20% support in most elections. This is a country in the United States where for president you have to be able to win it all or nothing. And that's why the two-party system is so entrenched there, at least at the presidential level. Yeah, otherwise people they always have to work with the establishment. I mean, I get it. But it's also a good sign that you're seeing, because of Bernie in part, that there's more and more progressive Democrats than ever before. There's AOC, there's Tlaib, there's Omar. They're not perfect on every issue, but there's Lee Carter. There's so many better Democrats now than before, and Bernie Sanders has played a big role in that. And it's probably more, Bernie has had a better impact running and losing to Hillary Clinton as a Democrat than he would have running for president as an independent and getting 2% of the vote. He made the right choice in the American context. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. In 1912, so when Debs, one of the best independents to run, really, but still, we talk about Eugene Debs as uniquely successful as an independent socialist, and yeah, we're talking about a man who couldn't get anywhere near 20%, right? Yeah, yeah, that's a great comparison about Trudeau's Ministry of Middle Class Prosperity to red tape reduction. These are the sort of fake ministers that exist solely as campaign messaging, right? It's like if it's pure signaling, right? I don't know what that person's gonna do. Okay. I hate the term middle class because effectively people think it applies to everybody but the very, very richest and the very, very poorest. But you have to feel that if you really believe that the middle class is what matters, don't you feel that every portfolio should be about making the middle class prosperous? Shouldn't every portfolio be about finding ways to help middle class people and working class people prosper? The idea that you need one specific one is absurd in my view. Luke, we're not we don't necessarily have the full details yet. Often what'll happen is that I don't know if we have them yet. But there's a mandate letter that MPs, that cabinet ministers will get from the prime minister, which is often a sort of outline about what what is expected of them in the course of their mandate. So this particular minister might get a letter that says, here is the overview of your position and what we expect of you. In some positions, it's very clear because there's always a minister of finance. There's always a minister of national defense. So it's there's these established roles, but then there are other roles that are just made up on the spot, like this one, and we don't know what it's going to be about. Yeah, we don't know when either is Trudeau. It exists solely for Trudeau to say that it exists. So Trudeau can say, look, no one cares more about the middle class than me. I've created the first ever minister for middle class prosperity in this country. Who loves the middle class more than I do? That's exactly what it's for. Yeah, I don't like the arms sales to Saudi Arabia. It's bad. We shouldn't be selling arms to Saudi Arabia. Heck, even if you believe we should, they're not even paying for them. Have you read the news that they're behind their payments? It's we shouldn't sell arms to Saudi Arabia. We shouldn't sell arms to regimes that disrespect human rights so systemically on their own people, but then also go and use those weapons against Yemenis in a war there. I think it's a bad move. I know the deals were originally pursued under Harper, but the deals were formally done under Trudeau and Stéphane Dion. And I think that it's a travesty that he did those. I don't know about that, about the Bernie or bust thing. I mean, in my view, I've said, like, look, Bernie is the only good progressive option, in my view. But I think using that makes you look like you're holding the party hostage. Makes it look like you're playing this game as a hostage situation and less of a fair-minded debate. So I don't necessarily like the whole Bernie or bust tactics. That whole, if you don't pick Bernie, we're going to burn it all down. Because again, that's what some people said in 2016. And then after the election, people still today blame Bernie Sanders supporters and even Bernie for the reason Hillary Clinton lost. Because everyone said Bernie or bust, Bernie or bust, Bernie or bust. Burn it all down if Bernie doesn't win. Now, the reality of the situation was that more Bernie Sanders supporters voted for Clinton than Hillary Clinton supporters voted for Obama in the election where she lost. Way more Hillary Clinton supporters went Republican than Bernie Sanders supporters went Republican. But the narrative, which was of course created to embarrass Bernie Sanders, but it didn't help because people were saying Bernie or bust. And so when people make the Bernie or bust statement, I think it hurts Bernie Sanders. It hurts him now, and it'll only add fuel to the fire if the Democrats lose, because they'll point to that hashtag and say, look, it was Bernie's fault and Bernie's supporters' fault that we lost because they wanted to, they cried and they took their ball home instead of accepting the results. It's bad tactically. It's really bad tactically to basically start talking about how you're going to quit if you don't get what you want. And let's be real. If somebody had a hashtag called Buttigieg or bust, then we'd all mock the fuck out of them, right? Like, let's be real, right? Like, we'd be like, what's up with these whiny little losers taking their ball and going home if they don't win? I think we have to, be fair and be equal here and realize that it doesn't look good when we do it either. Amanda Alvaro, she's like a liberal pundit. She does her job as a liberal pundit. I'm not going to criticize her on a personal level. I'm an NDP guy. I go on the media and I say NDP things, and I'm sure some people call me a hack or whatever. So I got no ill will with her. I do think some of her focus on the election was really bad and really vapid in some ways. Like, for instance, she basically attacked Jagmeet Singh for talking about economic justice and stuff too much. And her whole narrative was Singh keeps saying the same thing in debate after debate. And I was like, well, what is it wrong to have a politician that's got to focus on the issues that matter to Canadians? And it was very clear that she spent much of her time during those debates attacking the NDP, which showed me that her goal was to stop NDP growth. So she wasn't really defending the Liberal plan as much as attacking the NDP plan. But that's just a personal gripe. But she's doing her job as a Liberal pundit. That's what you're there to do. When I do media, I have I do different kinds of media. Those of you who don't know, I do in Canada, I do a lot of mainstream media. During the election, I was on the national news a couple times a week, talking to newscasters and stuff. And on some shows, I go on as an academic. And academics don't have to be neutral, but they have to be a little bit more measured in their approach. And then there are other shows where I go on and I am very clearly representing the NDP. Like, it's a panel show and I am the NDP guy. And then there's my channel here where this is my own brand on my own channel and I can do whatever the hell I want. And the way you approach these things really matters based on context. So the way I talk here is different than the way I talk when I'm on a professorial interview versus the way I talk as when I'm on a mainstream pundit interview. And so you can tell the difference. Yeah, every once in a while I swear a little bit. I try not to do it too much, but a well-placed swear can have a good effect. I mean, Comrade Internet, I don't disagree, but my point is tactically saying Bernie or bust just makes you look bad. It makes you look like you're already trying to declare the process wrong and that you're already preparing to lose. And I don't think it looks good. That's just all I'm saying. I'm not. No, I mean, yeah, Roman, Alana, I get all that. I totally do. But what I'm saying is that, like, people point specifically to the Bernie or bust thing, regardless of the facts. And I get it. They're going to blame Bernie somehow, but I don't think Bernie or bust is a hill to die on. I just don't think that hashtag is so important that we need to defend it. I just don't think so. John, I do agree with that. John, I do agree that Bernie is my compromise, 100%. CJ, I mean, I haven't studied that situation about getting the Greens to 5%. That's an interesting tactic, like say in Vermont or in like New York State. That's really interesting. I don't know like tactically how you would pull that off, but that is like, yeah, in California, a lot of the blue states, or even in red states where the Democrats are going to lose anyway, try to get yeah, that would be interesting. But I haven't studied it more than that to look at that. I'm not saying say blue no matter who. I'm just saying don't say Bernie or bust. Just you don't, and again, it's real, but just you don't say it at this point because I feel like it makes you look like you're already planning to lose and you're trying to make excuses. That's just, it sounds bad, is what I'm saying. I don't even necessarily disagree. I'm saying it sounds bad. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, look, and I'm not going to begrudge anybody here for voting green or not voting or voting for whoever else if Bernie doesn't win. I'm not going to be one of these people that's going to shame you into voting for the Democrat no matter who. I'm not going to tell you to be blue no matter who. But I'm just saying, Bernie or bust is not good tactically. I just don't think it is. I don't think it sounds good tactically. That's my viewpoint. Unapologetic, thanks for the donation. We stand a socialist live streamer. I appreciate that. I appreciate all your guys' support. It's really great. Thanks for being here a little bit later. I'll probably go for another few more minutes. It's getting a little late here, and the questions seem to be slowing down a little bit, but I'm happy to be here on this stream tonight with you guys. Generally, just for those who are new, a couple things. If you like my political views and you happen to be new here, consider subscribing. If you are subscribed, click that little bell. It's really nice to see that. That means you see all the content and it doesn't get lost in your general browse tab and you never see it. Also consider sharing the content around, things like that. It would be really, really appreciated because the way that the way YouTube works is that if you want your work to be seen, it needs to be seen by more people to be seen by more people. And so you guys being here, sharing the work, talking about the work, commenting, liking, really helps the channel grow and succeed. And as for those of you who are longer term viewers, you know that when I first started, the quality was way lower, and it's your guys' support that have allowed me to like get a better microphone, get a better lighting system, give myself more time to become acquainted to my software and hardware, things like that. $2 for a Red Bull. Yeah, I mean, yeah, not a bad idea. Yeah. Yeah, consider a donation if you guys want. I mean, like, yeah, certainly you could support the channel. I have a Patreon. It's a link in the description. But of course, I get it. Not everyone has the means to donate via Patreon. The single biggest thing you could do to help is just watch the content. If you guys watch all my videos, then my videos do better, even if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, that's just how the YouTube algorithm, the way the algorithm works. I'll tell you, like, from what, we don't know everything. One of the biggest things YouTube looks at when they want to know if a video is good or not is, do you click on it when it passes your eyeballs on your screen, and do you watch it for a long time on the video? So if you see my video, you click it and you watch it all the way through, YouTube says, hey, that's a decent video. I am going to show that video to more people. Put it up higher on subscribers' viewpoints, and maybe show it to people who don't subscribe to this guy but watch content similar to him. That's how this whole game works. So, like, you know, that's how this works. So the biggest thing you could do to support a small channel like mine is, like, recommend it to people, like, watch all the videos, give comments like that. That's what it's very much about, right? You know? Again, thanks so much, Karen Sita, for a kitty. I'm going to let my wife know that Smokey was personally responsible for a $2 donation. John, thanks so much for the generous donation. Thanks for being a far superior option to hearing my more centrist friends continue to talk about how mean Bernie is during the debates. Bernie is not mean at all. I think Bernie is a very nice man. He is, you know, direct with his points, direct with his approach, and sometimes he could be a bit gruff, but I don't think Bernie is mean at all. I think Bernie is actually very engaging and rather nice. Luke Cho, what can you specify what you mean about the recent change? Because I can answer as much as I can, but there's so many changes all the time that I need something more specific. Facts are facts, man. Roman, yeah, the quote-unquote centrist facts, the realities, yeah. There's a walkout being planned, bread tubers going over the peer tube. I mean, I'm not totally versed on the walkout. I've read a little bit about it. I don't know if I've read enough to offer a general comment on anything that I'd want to commit to without reading a little bit more closely, because I want to really get a good sense about the aims. PeerTube, I've heard has some really good and bad things about it. The anti-corporate nature of it is really good, but they lack some accessibility issues. It does have that hyper free speech mentality, which can sometimes veer into like that kind of far right. But I'd be willing to explore using alternative venues like PeerTube, at least on just to look at it. I'm not opposed to it, certainly. One thing is I might look at doing some stuff on Twitch every now and then. Not that Twitch is like a bastion of socialism, but that it is, you know, if only partially an alternative to YouTube. So we should try to embrace multiple platforms, but I haven't made any sort of decisions in that regard. Roman with another donation. Thank you. Christo, Bernie is a friend of mine. That's great. It was really funny. My wife and I and a couple of our friends went on a trip last year. We're in Ontario, and we went to Quebec City for a trip. And of course, if you're in Quebec, you know you border Vermont. So we saw more Vermont license plates than usual. And every time I saw a Vermont license plate, I thought, maybe that's Bernie. And maybe we're going to see him, and Bernie's going to like wave to me and be like, Christo, I read one of your articles. It was really good. Let's go have lunch together. But it was never Bernie. It was never Bernie. That's my story. That's the story. Oh, Luke, yeah, I've heard that general thing that it's like they may remove content that's not financially viable. I don't know too much of the details. That sounds really bad. I don't like that idea. The biggest concern I've heard with that, the rationale, which seems reasonable, is that there's some videos out there that are just 10-hour loops of memes, and I could see why YouTube would like delete joke content like that isn't generating ad revenue, because it's burning up a lot of like data space, like a 10-hour joke video. But I think the biggest concern is that a lot of LGBTQ content is disproportionately targeted for demonetization, because whether or not that's it, because in an unfair sense, content about like non-binary issues or LGBTQ issues is seen as quote unquote controversial. And that means it's more likely to be demonetized. And if that happens, YouTube might delete those videos as not commercially viable. Although none of that has actually happened yet. That's just a potential outcome. But I think people in marginalized communities are right to have concerns, although nothing has happened yet, like there yet. But that's the concern. I can certainly see that. Oh, COPA, yeah. There's also COPA. COPA's interesting. I think like for most people's content, I don't think it's gonna be an issue. It's really an issue if your content is borderline dealing with children or not. So my content is clearly not for children. One, like I just like I don't swear a lot, but I don't cover like kids topics. I don't talk about kids products. I only talk about video games every now and then, but usually not video games that are even plausibly marketed to children like Mario or Pokemon or things like that. And so it's not so much going to affect me. The big effect is going to be on channels that are marketed to kids. Because what's happening with YouTube is that they've been marketing for a long time now on to young people using targeted data. And you're not supposed to collect data on children, on kids. And by that they mean people under 13, because you're not supposed to do that. And the way you make money on YouTube is companies will look at your video, look at who watches it, and when you put your video up, there will be a algorithmic auction for your video, and an ad will get shown, and that ad will be sold for a certain amount of value. And YouTube, for a video, after it's been aired for a while, will generate something called a CPM, or cost per mille, which is to basically say, on average, when your video gets 1,000 ad-covered playthroughs, it'll generate X amount of dollars. So there might be one of my videos that, let's say, generates $7 CPM, which is pretty reasonable. And I get 55% of that, which is to say, for every 1,000 views, I'll get just over $3.50, right? That's how it works. But part of that is driven by the fact, whether that number is higher or lower, by the demographics of who watches my channel. Is the demographic well-defined and targetable? Is the demographic seen as affluent? Is the demographic seen as active on YouTube? And on and on and on. And if you make content for kids specifically, and you're not able to effectively target ads to kids anymore, then in effect, channels making content for children are going to be hit very hard by this new COPA thing. It's not so much going to hit channels like mine, and even some channels that are borderline, as long as they're careful with the classification of their content. The whole point is they want you to declare a video if it's meant for children, so that on that video, targeted ads and data won't be collected. So that's the whole point there. So let's say I made a video that was for kids on one of my videos, for whatever reason. I made a video about children's toys. Even if not targeted to children, it would be something that would be seen as child-related, and I would have to click, yes, this is child-related. On that video, they wouldn't be able to collect the same kind of data they collect from my other content. That's the effect of COPA. Whether it'll screw small channels or big channels, I'm not sure. It's going to primarily hit kid-based channels. Yeah, CJ, that's a more generalized issue about repetitive content. I'm not sure exactly what causes that. There's a whole bunch of issues, and I know that one prominent history YouTube channel also didn't get permanently demonetized, but basically all their videos get hit because they make videos about like World War I and World War II, and sort of unavoidably you have to use certain language and terminology and imagery which is controversial, like certain symbols, like of certain political parties and of certain movements. And if you use those symbols, you might get hit with demonetization, even though it's very clearly something that's ad-friendly, because if you watch the History Channel, they show ads on shows about World War II. And so the algorithm has a whole bunch of issues. Yeah, story time with Christo. I mean, maybe I would do that. See, that's the thing. If I do story time with Christo when I read Mouseland, I would probably, to be safe, have to click that as kids content. Because it's like a storybook thing. It's like a childlike allegory. That's like an interesting one. But you can see how that would be like the rarest of outlier videos. Yeah, kids channels are massive on YouTube. Some of the biggest performers are kids channels. They benefit from the fact that like the of autoplay features, they create really long videos. Kids just watch them passively, and like they benefit from the algorithm. And they've been able to target ads. And marketing to children is incredibly lucrative. Younger people, if you market stuff to younger people, like the sub 24 crowd, you get very high CPMs because like it's just that's an in-demand demographic. Yeah, CJ, there are symbols that are in certain context, or if YouTube gets them from a certain angle with their automated systems, they will demonetize certain things. And so what happens often is that you can appeal and they'll generally reverse it. But if the video goes up and it's demonetized, in the interim, any views on that video were not shown with ads. And so as you guys might know, if you, like most videos get the majority of their views soon after they get posted. Because if I post a video, it gets a rush of views from subscribers, right? It gets like people, some of you guys watch my stuff a lot. It's great to see, and you'll click it and you'll watch the video right away. I love that, and it's great for the channel. But if a video gets demonetized when it gets posted, those first few views aren't monetizable. And so let's say 4 hours later or 12 hours later, YouTube looks, confirms that the video is actually not a violation of the ad policy and turns monetization on. Well, by then you might have lost thousands of views of monetizable views, and that hurts your earnings on that video. And that's a big issue. What some channels do is you can post a video unlisted. YouTube will do that scan, then you can post it. But if you make content that requires timeliness, like a political channel, like a news channel, and it relies on you being one of the first people out on an issue, you don't have that luxury, right? Comrade, you said the connection just died? That's interesting. It looks good on my end. Out on an issue, you don't have that luxury, right? Okay, we still good? Looks like we're still good. Comrade, you said the connection just died? Yeah, I think we're still good. Okay, that was weird. Maybe there was just a blip. It looks good on my end. Okay. Concerns I want to get rid of the CBC is incredibly vital. It provides news coverage where nobody else will do it. And especially in a market like ours, where more and more news agencies are basically going out of business or reducing their coverage, you effectively need a public broadcaster that will provide local news even when it's quote-unquote not market viable. Yeah, disco. I mean, I totally get you. I get the understand. You don't want to why YouTube is doing it. Jeffrey, yeah, we did talk about the debate. We talked about the debate, the structure, who did good, who did bad. You could certainly. I'm just about to wrap up, probably in the next few minutes. Head to bed. It's almost 1:00. But when this goes up for on demand, you can certainly watch that. And we sort of did some Q&A and some brief analysis on the debate earlier on. So I'm probably going to finish up actually about now, guys, because I am getting a little tired. Got to get ready for bed and all that. I want to say thank you for those who watched the stream. Again, 37 people here at 1 a.m. pretty much. is very good. I'm very happy to see that. Thank you so much for your super chat donations. I want to remind folks that if they want to support the channel otherwise, there's a Patreon link in the description. If you want to see this content more regularly, click the subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, click the little bell next to the subscribe button. And if you like this stuff and you know other people who might like it, consider sharing it with them. That always helps to spread the message. Share it on your social media, Reddit, things like that. All of that really helps to help the channel grow. And if you want to see more content like that, it's the best way to make that happen. So anyway, thanks guys so much. As a final reminder, I do every Wednesday night, I do a live stream on politics. We talk Canadian politics, American politics, whatever else. Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Usually go for about 3 hours. And then I am probably going to start doing more video game streaming, at least once a week. I might do one tomorrow night or like Friday night or something, and then maybe move to a regular night later on, playing certain video games, just having casual chats. Nothing too formal, just kind of me just playing some games, chatting. If you guys like video games and politics, that might be fun too. All right, have a good one, guys. Thanks so much.